Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Fairfield County's live webinar on your digital marketing checklist for building revenue in 2020. My name is Bob Hogan, and I'm the webinar coordinator and a business mentor here at SCORE Fairfield County, and I'll be your host today. Our presenter today is Kate Berg. More on Kate in just a minute, but just first some brief information on SCORE. SCORE is a national organization, and we are part of the SBA of the federal government. Locally here in Fairfield County, we have over 130 volunteers with a wide range of industry, process, and subject matter expertise. And we offer three primary value-added services to small business owners. We offer free one-on-one counseling that you can have either face-to-face, by telephone, or email. And you can request counseling by either clicking on the link that you see on the screen, or you can go to our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, and request a mentor. We also offer a wide range of educational workshops like this, about 150 per year. And thirdly, we offer extensive resources on our website, including access to a network of subject matter experts that are at your disposal. Our next webinar will be 2 weeks, actually on January 7th at 12 noon. It's a Tuesday. And the topic is Buying a Franchise, Is It Right for You? And our presenter that day will be Cliff Enico. And you can find more specifics on that, again, on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. We have set aside time for Q&A at the end of the presentation today. So if you have a question, please use the chat feature on your screen. It's located, if you just run your mouse over the bottom of the screen, you can see the chat feature there, and we'll allow 10 minutes or so for questions at the end, but you can submit them at any time during the webinar. We will end at 1 o'clock today to respect your time. The session is being recorded, so you can have access to both the audio and the materials that Kate is using today, and that will be available again on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org, within about 24 to 48 hours. It's now my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Kate Berg. Kate has 25 plus years in the technology and strategic marketing, focusing on helping companies grow, go public, and secure venture capital funding. She has deep experience in content marketing and influencer communities. The recent company she led was sold for $100 million in November of 2016. Kate has also built 2 social media and mobile-based businesses before 2008. In the 90s, she built global PR for Gartner and helped KPMG Consulting go public. And she has been a member of SCORE since 2009. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Kate. Kate, all yours.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I don't know what part of the country you all live in, but here in the New York, Connecticut area, it is miserable out there. So thank you for taking time to dive into some excellent skill building and knowledge building ventures here for 2020. It's an exciting time for marketing and entrepreneurship, and it's a little tough to take less than an hour and cover all of the things that we want to talk about. It's a little like trying to learn Portuguese on your lunch hour. So I'll do the best I can in painting a picture to update us all on how we should be thinking about marketing in the year ahead, and the tactics and tools that we can use to get there. Thank you, Budley. We can move past my bio slide. Thanks. So really, when we're, I did a fair amount of diving into some research and preparing for this call. You can move past the bio slide, Bud. Thank you. Thank you. Because there are so many things happening now, and I will get to sort of the key trends that are happening in a couple of minutes. But right now, hopefully what we can really talk about is what platforms that you really should be looking at now, and reevaluating maybe things that you have done for the past in your business or businesses, and really how to create the content and the revenue that you're looking for in the months ahead. Also, I'm going to talk about some specific tools and case studies that will be of practical use. And so I would recommend pulling down this deck off of the SCORE website, because that way you don't have to frantically note take during the session. You can just absorb the information and also chat with us, because we do have that feature, as Bob has said here in the chat. So onward to some basics, Bud. Next slide. Thank you. So really, before you have to set the table before we can do more sophisticated thinking in terms of how to drive awareness and build revenue for our business. About 53% of mobile users abandon websites which take longer than a few seconds to load, 3 seconds to be exact. So if you have not tested your own properties, test and fix those issues before you really start to think more sophisticated ideas. Google suggests less than a 2-second load time to be ideal. Mobile searchers are more likely to make a local buying decision. So your mobile optimized website is a great asset to you guys. Also, with regard to CX, which is short for customer experience, don't do harm. I would say make it as perfect as it can be and anticipate your client's needs. If you've been in business for a while, you probably know many of the trigger points, good and bad, for prospects and clients. And so be very responsive to those. And I say don't be annoying in your messaging or intrusive in your marketing. Those are sort of the golden rules now. And the last point with regard to other reviews and other people's opinions, which is a lot of how we make decisions when we're online, having recommendations visible may really encourage people to choose you in that moment of purchase decision. Thank you, Budley. Next slide, please. So these are some of the trends that are really key and which I was refreshing myself on before this call. Certainly ephemeral content will continue to be really important in the year ahead. This is something that is available only for a short duration of time, and then it disappears in a number of seconds, and it does not stay online unless you pull it into a feed to save it. That's specifically talking about maybe Instagram stories. Snapchat was the original one who created stories, and those are examples of this type of content. Another big trend is shoppable posts. Instagram has introduced a thing called storefronts, and social networks are continuously evolving to become retail platforms. So brands and marketers, you can leverage these, and you can incorporate social commerce into your sales strategies. Maybe you already are. If so, we would love to hear about it. We can learn from each other on this call. The next point with regard to video is a really big one. According to a study, Cisco study, by 2022, 82% of all online content will be video content. So you can start by using features like stories, both for social media content and for advertisements. You can also add videos to your social media posts, even on platforms that had initially been dominated by just image or text. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, and really thinking in pictures, thinking in video. Also, I would say, with regard to influencer, marketers are not just collaborating with the Kardashian types, but really are working down the food chain to a much more niche and smaller influencer base, and working with a whole host of relevant influencers for their businesses. And so start to think about almost a friends and family mindset, and we can talk about that a little bit more later. And then really, of course, personalization. I think in the years past, we would think about personalization as being the domain of email, and that would be where our understanding of personalization ends. But there are technologies that are existent in any of the great and affordable platforms, such as Hootsuite or MailChimp or these others. There's a lot of ways to be more personal with your communications. And so think about how you can be more one-on-one in your communications with folks. Next slide, please. So one of the initial things that I certainly, in talking to larger companies, would always talk about social listening before even creating a strategy for the business. And social listening is basically tuning in to Twitter, to reviewing LinkedIn and finding groups, and basically research, which is a PR person's best friend. Before you would ever think about how you would promote a person or a brand, you really want to dive into the market and look at who else is out there doing similar things, who are leaders, who are influencers in the space. And by influencers, I mean thought leaders, not Instagram models. And those are important tactics, or rather actions to take, because it really will help shape those insights will help shape how you approach and update your thought process for promoting and for building relationships and engaging your future loyal clients. These are some tools, just 3. There are many out there, but these are probably the most well-known platforms, and they do a lot. But one of the things they do offer is analytics and listening, so I listed them there for you. And so, Budley, next slide, please. So let's talk about it. I mean, really the list of social sites grows by months as we go forward. And in fact, with the trend toward more private sharing rather than public, many of the existent dominant platforms such as Instagram and Facebook, which are the same owner, are launching their own private versions of that. But in any case, let's talk about ones to use. I certainly spend a fair amount of time talking about Instagram with people. Stories certainly become huge in the last couple of years. There's probably more than 650 million people every day using stories. And you might say, why is that? And it's because it's very easy, very visual. It's very easy to not only do as a marketer and a business owner, it's easy to interact with as a user. It's a lot of fun to browse, and a lot of people will intake an inordinate number of brands and product and news information just by watching a bunch of stories. And certainly with TikTok, if you've heard about the growth of TikTok, that's in a really engaging, really creative way that someone is telling a story about themselves. Maybe they're not a business on TikTok, maybe not yet. However, I will tell you a great example that I heard the other day on a podcast, that the Washington Post is employing TikTok to use, they're employing TikTok to raise awareness and build awareness for the Washington Post brand and their fabulous journalists to a new audience of younger users. And there was one journalist who is probably in his 20s, pitched it to his bosses and the editorial on the editorial team, and they said, okay, so he spends half of his day now doing that, and then the other half doing his journalistic job. But he spends the morning thinking of a story to tell. It could be revolving around a specific reporter and the work that they are doing, and he'll create it, he'll shoot it, he'll edit it, and post it. And then the most important part that I remembered when I heard that was he invests time to engage with the audience once that post has been put up. And that's pretty important step, because social media is a conversation. It's not just a broadcast outlet. So it really, stories and other tools like that provide such great opportunities for interaction with clients. And other examples of how maybe stories could be used is create and try out polls and other interactive elements. And a poll could be one question that is very pertinent on the minds of your specific audience. One entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur I know, uses stories to ask opinions about things that are on the minds of other 23-year-olds, or just silly things like how they brush their teeth. And it actually has nothing to do with, you know, any business he has, but he's building a relationship. He will share out those opinions on stories so that the users, so you can see the whole dialogue as it processes. And it's really great. It really builds his personality as a brand, as a young entrepreneur, and engagement with the community, all in one tactic. So I really love that. So Budley, I think next slide. And again, it's a lot to cover in a short period of time. This is a huge world, so I apologize for kind of racing through a bunch of things, but hopefully we can chat more specifics. So this was a big find over the last year for me, is watching private channels become much more important in the landscape here. And so Hootsuite says that over 65% of the people that they talk to feel more comfortable sharing in messaging apps rather than the public domains that we have been accustomed to in the past on social. 50% of senior marketers say they're rethinking their strategy to make the most of private channels. I don't know what types of businesses they surveyed for that. I don't have a lot of details, but I find that to be a pretty interesting thing. And it has to be a big trend, because Zuckerberg of Facebook has really made it public that they are shifting. And there are a lot of reasons for that, which, you know, you probably know with regard to regulation. But it's the fastest growing kind of online communication, and they're in a good position at Facebook and Instagram to know that, given their audience. So they are going to be rebuilding their services around what he says people want, which is privacy, security, and safety. But I would just say that there's a really great roadmap for enabling much more, in my opinion, dynamic use of these platforms in the years to come. And I've put the Hootsuite blog links in the deck so that you guys can go right to where I read about this stuff. It's really very interesting and will help you think about, in a more sophisticated fashion, how you would use, Budley, next slide. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Please, thank you. The public feed versus the private channel. So really, your public feeds are still a great place to drive awareness for your business or businesses, and then using the private channels alongside to really be much more one-on-one in your engagement. And so I'm going to give you a couple of examples that I found in that blog. So there's a hedge fund called Citadel, and they had a program called the Data Open Tournament. It's a game-based social recruiting program that they launched. So they used traditional public social feeds to promote this tournament and create excitement around it. But then they used private channels to give the game sticking power for the longer duration. They helped students connect through an invite-only Facebook group. They used a chat bot that Facebook has, and they tested students with different problems, math problems. And those who completed the problem successfully had their resumes sent to the top of the pile. So according to this blog post, students interested in in this Data Open program spent 149% more time on the Citadel website than other visitors. And the Facebook chatbot drove more than 5,000 conversations. And the number of applications for entry increased by 74%. So that sounds like a really great result, and certainly one to brag about for Citadel. A second one that I'll give you just to illustrate this more, there's a meditation app called Headspace, which uses public social channels to drive awareness for its brand. But they also have a closed Facebook group with more than 17,000 members, according to this blog post. And Headspace users discuss meditation practices, and they ask questions. They lend support to one another in this private space, which is absolutely wonderful. This is building this community and it's a true community. It's not a broadcast channel. The Facebook group includes no product placements or posts or advertising. It's all about developing a relationship between the brand and its customers and creating a sense of community. So I thought those two examples were quite different and really helpful. Thank you, Budley. So just to dive in a little bit specifically, in case you don't have experience with stories, they're 15-second long disappearing stories. They're fun, generally well done. You can add music like TikTok has. Digital marketing has obviously, we've moved in many ways for some elements to a short term, a sort of snappy, more fun, authentic, and fast, which if you think about how we consume media, it makes sense. It fits with our the plethora of options that we have and the interesting and fun world of info we're looking at. Long form is still really, really important, and it's very important for your search engine optimization, SEO, for your overall brand visibility, and that's where this ties into the digital breadcrumbs that you want to put out there to help people find you, engage with you, and purchase from you whatever you're selling. Thank you, Bud. So just a couple of quick tips. I thought that this would be useful for you guys. There are a couple of editing apps out there which are free or almost free. So I'm not going to go through this now. I think this speaks for itself. These are just some places for you to go to create stories and be better at creating stories. Also watch other people's stories, learn by watching other people who are really good at it and engaging. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world after Google, and owned by the same folks. YouTube is an amazing place to learn everything. I mean, frankly, anything you're looking for. Thanks, Bud. This is a company called Later, which is it's basically a platform only for this one tactic. So they are, you can imagine, quite specialized. And I went on this site the other day and saw their pricing. It's actually $0 to $49 a month. 0 is for the individual who isn't running a business. $9 is for the solopreneur. And then $49 was the top price a month. And, so this might be a very helpful and frankly cost-effective way or a tool that you might want to check out if you're serious about using Instagram stories for business. Next slide, Bud. Thanks. So obviously we have a lot of things going on with Facebook right now with regard to some of the private messaging that I touched on. It's making it an interesting environment to spend time. Their Facebook Messenger allows private messaging and can really create, as we had talked about, this ongoing communication, which is much more, what shall I say, personal and can be transactional, but it's not just an awareness thing, which an ad would be. It's also a way to really connect. And there are some great tools that I found without popping around too much, which show you how to create an ad and then have a link to go right into the messenger. So you can take a prospect or a client from one tactic to the next. And I popped in the guide and blog posts in this deck as well for you. But it's still a great platform, a huge platform, which is getting more and more intelligent with every month that goes by, with the ability for them to get smarter about their business. With 2.5 billion users around the world, they're figuring out how to do your job better. So it's good to leverage that. One thing, if you pull back, and you look at the platform growth, I don't know the age of your clients. It certainly is skewing older now. The most growth that the platform is experiencing, I believe, is in the 55 plus age category. So take, you have to sort of think about your audiences, think about who you're going after. And as you look at those platforms, you can certainly educate yourself, research, and I would recommend focusing on one or two and not trying to do everything. You can have a presence, but I would really focus your strategic intent on one or two, because I would imagine you don't have 40 hours a week unless you've got a team to do it. Then that's a different topic. But most of the folks I talk to are really trying to do many of these things with just a small team or themselves. So you have, I'm trying to be practical for that case. Next slide, Bud. Thank you. So really in talking about how people find you, and this probably will come as no surprise that it's really peer-to-peer is really an important thing, and reviews are how that is represented. But so consumers visit 6 different places on average, and before they even get to you. So they know what's going on before you tell them. And so it's very important to think about that when you're communicating, or rather when you're building out your content semantically, to be very clear and clear English, not in business speak, but in much more conversational tone, but relevant location specific form, so that Stamford, Connecticut is mentioned in your copy, not in a pedantic sort of obvious way, but certainly have it in your location in all the relevant spots on social posts as well. All of that really helps people find you and drive to you. But I do say that the reason why people are going and looking at reviews and relying on them so much is because they don't have to take your word for it anymore. That's yesterday. That was the old days. And so really that leads me into the next slide, Bud, which is really using those customers to drive the loyalty. And I have so many things on these next few slides, so many bullets that I'm probably not going to spend too much time here. But I would really make customer experience just so critical, and I would almost create, if I were starting a business or running a business now, an advisory group filled with some of your most difficult and ardent customers. And this does not need to be a big time consuming thing. You might pick 4 to 6 people and keep them updated on your progress, get their input on important decisions. Big businesses do this. Why not do it as a smaller business? It seems like it would be very informative way to proceed. So these are some great tactics. Constant Contact, MailChimp, all really great and more sophisticated than ever customer relationship management platforms that will help you create your core audience database, your prospect database, and customer database. Those 2 would be great, and you tend them, build them, use the email, maybe an email newsletter, for lack of a better way to sex it up, as your anchoring element, and many other things can flow around that. It may be an older tactic, but just like direct mail, I met with a company yesterday. Direct mail is still a great tactic. It is not dead. You only need to visit your post office, your mailbox to recognize that. It's more sophisticated than ever in terms of how they can target specific niche audiences, and also know if you've expressed interest in something. You went to a trade show, you're probably going to get a postcard if somebody's doing their job well, and that helps you on your potential purchase journey. So all these tactics, email is absolutely still a fantastic way to reach people. It's just how we use it is changing. So I think anyway, I've said enough about that. Can we move on? Sorry. My mind is in a million different directions. So MailChimp about 6 months ago debuted a new integrated marketing platform for small to mid-sized businesses, SMBs. And they are, an example of a great tool that helps you save time and helps you do more interesting things and connect all these dots without having to, go get your MBA in marketing. They've done a lot of the hard work, and I certainly have no connection with MailChimp, but I read about them and I thought it was worth sharing that if you heard about them 10 years ago, they've certainly upgraded as Hootsuite and every of these platforms has done. They've invested and they continue to buy companies that have best of breed tools, and they integrate them into theirs. So thank you. Next slide, please. So here's an example of a local company. Is one case study that I feel like it's important to share because this entrepreneur was an award-winning caterer and events business out of Norwalk, Connecticut. And about 5 or 6 years ago, she realized that she was suddenly her business was getting hurt by newer entries into the market who may or may not have been as good, but were killing it on Instagram. They were younger entrepreneurs who really knew digital marketing. And she realized she had to up her game and really open up her, education. And she really devoted a fair amount of time in the next couple of years to learning about digital marketing. And her business has really flourished because of that. And here I'm putting that she is on Instagram and she follows others. She has charitable work that is rolled into her beautiful events business. She is extremely supportive of those charities and her fellow community members who are entrepreneurs. She has created through digital, she has recreated her long time standing in the community, both through church and synagogue and all the things that she does, and really reflects her leadership. And I think before she just wasn't, online. Well, she deserves a credit of her long-standing excellence, and she just stepped up and to reflect that properly in digital. And I think some of you who are business to business understand what I'm saying. LinkedIn certainly being the chief tool for B2B marketing. I know somebody reached out to me prior to this seminar to ask if I was going to cover that, and I said I was. So we'll go to the next slide, Bud, and hopefully you guys are reading these bullets while I talk because I'm not addressing them directly. So LinkedIn, there's a term called social selling, which if you have a B2B business, certainly a great place. Or if your clients, some of it could be B2B2C. There's a gentleman who reached out to me prior, Eric Sigmund, I believe you're online here now. And Eric has a great business, and he's a mathematician. He's an expert educator in the maths, as the English say. And he is extremely good at tutoring, and this is his business. And I would say that, you could make a case for finding the parents of students or the students themselves on LinkedIn. I would think probably more the parents. I figured the age is probably at the top, high school, but Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong there. But one thing that I was thinking about as I read, a little bit about you, Eric, was that former students really wrote some glowing testimonials that you have in quotes on your website. And one thing that, I can imagine doing, because you have a philosophy that you bring to your work, the growth mindset, you have given a book called Mindset Theory to students as a congratulatory gift, which was mentioned in one of the quotes. To me, that brought to mind that you could really create a more interesting, not that math tutoring isn't interesting, but a broader, more creative kind of message around who you are as an educator. And you could translate that into a monthly, weekly post on LinkedIn or Facebook or wherever, on your website, and put it in an email, or However, but really creating a narrative and bring the stories of your students, no names need to be included, along for that, so that you're raising the level of intellectual engagement, which is really probably going to resonate on an emotional level, which is what you want. So those parents are attracted and say, yeah, I want to know more about this guy. He's not just Joe Blow tutor. Now, about LinkedIn, you know, one of the things that when we talk about listening, social selling is all about being building your leadership and thought leader profile, but it's also about connecting with like minds and identifying influencers that are out there and supporting others who are leading the charge in the particular industry that you're in. And so you can do search on LinkedIn. Used to be sort of iffy. Now it's great. They've invested. They went public. They're, you know, Microsoft company. They're much more attenuated search function. So you could be amazed how much you will find on both Twitter and LinkedIn about your industry, and you can identify trending topics, and so that you can build your content around a topic. I mean, one thing that people do on Twitter, for example, and using hashtags, is really take advantage of a global or national or regional or local, all those levels, trending topic, and they will weave it into their business. And some do it more elegantly than others, but it is certainly a way to raise visibility and raise awareness, which is, as discussed, a good use of social platforms. Sprout Social, Sprout like Bean Sprout, Sprout Social has great insight tools, and so you might want to check them out. You'll be surprised how affordable some of these tools are. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more on social selling and talking. This graph shows and proves some of the benefits of using tools, and this is a couple years old, but I thought really good insights for us to look at. Reduced. So this is really how you can, you know, with prospects. So with prospects, socially sharing so much information about what they need, what they want, their pain points, and they share these on public profiles. So even the first point of contact that you have with them can be personalized and relevant and helpful rather than intrusive and cold. So this is one of the reasons that social selling is so effective. And according to this data source, eMarketer, 92% of B2B buyers are willing to engage with a sales professional who is known as an industry thought leader. And so it's something that, you know, a reputation that you can, if you can establish a reputation in the way of being thoughtful and helpful by posting relevant content, this is only going to be, you know, additive to your business now and going forward. Thank you. The next slide, please. Trying to looking at the time. Yelp is important, but I am behind on these slides. I'm trying to think. All right. So Yelp is important. It's important, especially if you're in the service business. So you might want to focus on a Yelp strategy. And you might even look at becoming an advertiser if you are in retail or restaurant and bar trade or home care trade. If you're a business, it's really important in any business, but it's, and so you really want to focus on ensuring that you get a couple of people to review you well. There's no other way than to reach out and ask. 70% of those who trash a business in the customer service wind up giving a 1-star review, and this can be a killer for you. So ensure that if you have a problem with this and you are really concerned about somebody who did that, the only way around that problem is to engage with Yelp and become an advertiser, and they will help you address that. you will not be able to address it without the expense of becoming an advertiser. And I'm just giving you a little hashtag real talk there. Next slide, please. So these are some quick ideas for review and really building that community of love. CTA is a call to action. So make sure you have one on your website. If you don't, make it easy for people to go and see where they can write a review. Also say thank you. And that will go a long way. It sounds obvious, but a simple thank you page to customers with a request. Also, personalized text or email. I'm sure you're engaging or doing this maybe already, or engaging with businesses that do this. I think it's nice. It's not intrusive. I think it's wonderful. Reach out and engage a negative reviewer directly. This is must probably give you stomach churns, but 78% of consumers who receive a response believe the business cares about them. So even if you made a mistake or they weren't happy, you've got to invest to repair that rift. Next slide, please. So of course you really want to leverage the glowing reviews and ask folks if they gave you a great review if you can reuse it, and they will probably be fine with that. You do not need the last name. You could just use their first name. But people take in the whole picture when they find you online. So even when somebody mentions your business name to a prospect, they're seeking digital inputs to form their impressions and their opinions, and ultimately their decision about whether to do business with you or not. So, you know, when I'm giving you all of these thoughts and ideas, it's really to try and flesh out the picture and remove doubt. And unfortunately, today, lack of information is going to sow doubt. And I think you can only look at your own behavior in choosing a restaurant, for example. If you see no information on it, or whatever other trade, you might really start to question if they exist because we're so accustomed to doing our homework now. Next slide, please. And again, I apologize for blowing through these, but I do want to keep an eye on the clock. So as I talked about, spreading those positive reviews. Also, customers will definitely be happy to share information, and if you ask, and certainly asking right after, you know, you did a great job for them is a, you know, American Express found that a happy customer will tell 9 other people about their experience, which is amazing, and it sounds right to me. Because why is that? What is that about human behavior? We do want to, some of us want to share our negative things on Twitter. I know a lot of people talk about their airplane travel. My friend Ted Rubin we tease him, he's a social media guru, and he complains a lot about his air travel, which he does a lot of on Twitter. But he certainly gets their attention, whether it's American Airlines or Delta or whomever else is left. So follow up, send a follow up, always respond. Harvard found that Harvard Business found that that hotels that respond receive much, 12% more reviews, and that can add up over time. And you do want that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So just really talking about content and how it can really drive business for you. Descriptive website copy. If your site was built a number of years ago, it's probably time to really update that and have a fresh look, and go to some sites that are very impressive to you. And you can just talk to a designer who's local to your area and ask for a similar look. And then that content is up to you to really bring the energy of, how do I really want to talk about my business? What's most important to me? And think about what you want to communicate. You're the expert, and be very visual in that form. By the way, festivities, if you go to festivities events, I forget her website, sorry, but it's all video now, and it's absolutely beautiful. And she didn't have that before. And her website, video is very important for Google search rankings. Google has made a decision a number of years ago, naturally, to focus on mobile and video, and those are the sort of preferred things, and that's how the algorithm sorts. So if you don't have good mobile experience, you're going to get penalized. I'm almost done. So next slide, tell your story. And everybody loves stories. People love stories. And did you help solve a big problem or host an event? Talk about it. One strong tactic for B2B on this is walk through a problem and a solution on LinkedIn and publish that in your profile. Ask a few people in your network to comment and share when you do it, because the LinkedIn algorithm will help it'll help get your post amplified. So you're building visibility just by asking a couple people, hey, do you mind just commenting on that and giving me a thumbs up on that? It will make a difference, and especially if you're connecting with the right people. Also, tend to that profile. Make sure your profile is descriptive to the brand you are promoting. If you have many hats and you wear many hats, you have to think about how to artfully weave those in to your CV on LinkedIn. Don't think that it has to look like a resume. It really is your own web page. I would consider it that way, your brand page. And then the next slide, please. So these are some free resources that will be really helpful. Social Media Examiner, I subscribe to. I really find that very helpful. And they give you moving strategies and trends, and then they'll give you a link with how-to guides and all kinds of things. So it will stay in front of you, and it's not just one and you're done here. Okay, I'm done talking. Thank you very much, and I will take questions.
Great, thanks, Kate. Just a reminder, if you'd like to submit questions, you can do so via the chat feature, which is in the at the bottom of your screen there. If you run your mouse over it, you'll see a chat, and you can feel to submit your questions there. We do have some questions already, Kate, and so I'll maybe start with a question from Simon that goes back to one of your early slides, and it's, what is it about ephemeral content that makes it so appealing? I'm looking for thoughts on content, I think, rather than the physical attribute for the medium.
Understood. It's a great question. I think it is truly, as I touched on briefly, the habits we have formed, and I think it's because of the prolific, the sheer volume of content that is out there and the channels that are out there. I don't know how many screens you have in front of you right now, but I have 3, and one is my phone and 2 are my computer. And outside my office, my TV is there, but people are just inundated. And so we as humans, we're very, very adept and adaptable. So we have learned how to take in more information than we did a number of years ago. And actually, this will weave into one of the questions I see there about boomers, and then are they engaging with ephemeral content, or rather private channels? Sorry, I thought it was ephemeral content. Let me think about this. So I think that it's fun. It's more fun than reading a bunch of text, and people don't have time. They don't want to invest the time to read a blog post. Think about, that's where we started this whole thing, is really on forums. And I know, Bud, you were one of the original gangsters and on chat forums and stuff. And this is going back 20 years. We've now scooted forward to a much more visual, much more, frankly, entertaining form of content. So that's the short answer there. And then I'll go to this boomers using private channels. It's a great question, and I think the answer is for sure. It's very dangerous to think that just because someone's over 55 that they are not technically adept. A company that I co-founded and spent the last couple of years building is in senior care. And when we developed our experiential survey aimed at consumers to understand their needs and preferences, we were shocked at how old, when we ran our first pilot, how upward, I won't say old, how upward in scale. Some of the, I think we had 92-year-olds answering our quick survey, which was very visual, clicking on images, and very quick, less than 90 seconds. They stuck with it. They answered all the questions. They're doing it on their iPad. Seniors love the iPad, and it's a fantastic platform for our use, because we know we can reach folks if the form factor is more easy to see and interact with. And a lot of people find the phones too small, so the iPad's fantastic for that.
Hey, Kate, maybe a related question to that from Charles is, what sites are best to attract seniors that are over 65?
Social sites, is that the question?
Yeah, I'm going to assume they're referencing social media sites.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Facebook for sure. That is where all the growth is. As I think I did mention, all the growth is happening so if I were focused on a business in that sector, which we certainly are in my company, we're looking at, we have Facebook as an active part of our strategy. I would also think about LinkedIn, certainly, and Twitter. Twitter, is really demo agnostic. It really has to do with what what you're interested in. And a lot of people are lurkers. Like 70% of the people that go on these sites are not posting, but they are consuming like mad. So, for example, Twitter, I often give people the advice if they are afraid to go on to Twitter. How I started years ago, I think it was in 2009, I just went on there and I started following a couple of journalists whom I found to be quite engaging. In fact, David Carr was one of them. And I found it to be really helpful to see their opinion outside of the journal for which they wrote. And then I also got over my hump of thinking it was a weird platform, because it's definitely very engineer-y the way it's designed, and it's not very user-friendly. But it's actually pretty easy once you figure it out. To post is simple. But I started by lurking and watching the traffic go by.
Here's a question on online reviews. Is there any way to know whether they're real or posted by paid people?
Oh, that's a huge perennial problem. And one thing I would say, John Andrews, the founder of Collective Bias, and I recently had a conversation about this. And he said that anytime he sees only 5-star reviews, he smells a rat and thinks that it looks a little fishy. In reality, there's always going to be one or two folks that are going to give you less than the perfect rating. So, and also, So one thing I wanted to mention actually about John, he has a new company called PhotoFi, which I wanted to plug here because it is a really cool platform for content creation, and they have free tools. It's the word photo and FY, PhotoFi. And I might recommend it to you as a business because it's a great way to maintain brand consistency if you have a number of employees, and you can have everyone using it, and really simply with one template that is built, create content that it really sings your brand's praises out there. It doesn't look all different from different employees. It keeps it consistent, and yet they can put their own unique spin on it. And then it's a great way to engage your audiences using your employees, who are your best advocates and maybe know more than you do as the boss.
Okay, thanks. We have a question here from Eve. Is there any grandfathered SEO benefit to updating existing web pages versus a fresh, completely new mobile responsive site?
It's a great question, really smart question, because I can't tell you that I know for sure, but everything that I know is that new tech content is continually being scanned afresh with algorithms that are constantly being updated, and people who make a living in this space have difficulty maintaining the cutting edge, because the algorithms are often updated weekly. So to me, it feels the answer would be no if you're talking about a 10-year-old site. Now, Does that mean, you know, that you don't pull that stuff forward? No, you should. But I really feel like the tech is really gonna stamp out some, you know, even if you've been there a long time. The problem is that the spiders and the tools that are used to comb are probably not going to favor old infrastructure, if you see what I'm saying.
I think that's very helpful. Here's a question on intellectual property. Are there any intellectual property or patent infringements issues that people should be aware of?
So if you're talking about content that you want to lift, I would give you, hopefully I'm answering this, the question correctly. The fair use doctrine or whatever is that you can pull a sentence, you can pull a quote and link to the original source. And frankly, this is a great way to get an opportunity to be relevant, be timely, kind of pull yourself up the food chain. If you're a smaller, just starting out, you can reference people who are thought leaders, and you as long as it's and this is really an old you know, journalistic or PR rule that hasn't changed in fair use. You can look that up. It's really a sentence or as much as maybe 2 sentences, and then you really must link to source or at least quote source, and then you're good to go, and you won't have any problem. In terms of images, I'd be really careful with that. There is technology. Years ago, people could get away with lifting stuff, and it's not the right thing to do, but people did it all the time for their businesses. But now there's technology to help comb images, and so people can find you very quickly, and they can say, take that down, mine.
Yeah, good caution. We got time for one last question here from Laura, and the question is, what is the most popular social media site for people aged 25 to 50 that are highly successful, busy professionals? And if you don't know, perhaps you could suggest where she might be able to find that information.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I need to know what kind of business you have, because that's a pretty broad age range, 25 to 50. It could be, you know, Facebook for the upper end of that, certainly not for the 25-year-old. It could be Instagram. Frankly, I'd say Instagram would fit that age group, because it is wholly that age group. I was recently looking at some data on that, and it's kind of chunked up into 3 categories, and you know, upward to 30 being the first, and each group gets about 30% of the audience. So it's very evenly distributed, and a good bet for folks. Well, I appreciate your compliment, Lana. Is that, yeah, Ayana? I'm sorry, my eyes are terrible. I have to put my glasses on. Ilana Appleby, thank you.
Okay, that's all the time we have for questions today. So just I've reminded people on the chat feature a little bit, but just a reminder, the webinar has been recorded, and the materials will be available likely within about 24 to 48 hours on our website, fairfieldcounty.score.org. And you just go to on-demand workshops, and you'll see it there along with our other prior webinars. Again, our next webinar will be Tuesday, January 7th at noon, and the topic is Buying a Franchise, Is It Right for You? With Cliff Enico presenting. And again, just a reminder, as you can see on the screen there, we do offer free individual counseling. So if you would like an individual counselor, you can use the link on the screen, or you can visit our website and request a mentor. Press that button. And if I could also urge you to please fill out your evaluations. That'll be sent at the end of the webinar. They're very helpful to us going forward. So on behalf of SCORE and Kate, I'd like to thank you for attending today's live webinar. And in closing, big thank you to Kate Berg for presenting today, and have a nice day, everyone.